May 29th, 1914 will be a day Canadians will remember in history, as that day marks the worst disaster in peacetime history of Canada. I am Michael Benitez, and today we'll be talking about one of the worst shipwreck in Canadian history, other than the Halifax explosion. Today we'll be talking about the sinking of the Canadian ocean liner Empress of Ireland. Let's begin the story of how this infamous sinking took place. May 26, 1914. The Norwegian coal mining ship Storstad leaves Sydney, Australia. She is under the command of Captain Thomas Anderson. The Storstad is sailing to Quebec, Canada, carrying 10,400 tons of coal. She has just been built only 4 years ago. However, Storstad's launch didn't go according to plan. As the ship was being launched, she collided with the SS Dardania, causing damage to the Storstad's stern. It was repaired, and she was able to start a commercial service. However, on May 29th, after three days of sailing, she would be in a more deadly collision. May 28th, 1914. Another steamship is getting ready for a new season of passenger service. This ship is very famous within her own country. Her name was the RMS Empress of Ireland. Having been built in 1906, Empress of Ireland, along with her oldest sister, Empress of Britain, was built for passenger service between Canada and Great Britain. However, they were supposed to be named Empress of Germany and Empress of Austria. Empress of Ireland was then named Empress of Ireland instead of Empress of Austria, and Empress of Britain became that name instead of Empress of Germany. This day, Empress of Ireland is beginning her new season of commercial service. She is not even 10 years old yet. On board are some lavish interiors that you may have found on some other ocean liners, like Cunard's Lusitania and Mauretania. It seems like some of the ideas of Empress of Ireland was taken aboard the Lusitania and Mauretania, judging of the fact that the Empress of Ireland was built a year earlier to the two British four-funnel liners. Even though Empress of Ireland isn't as big as the Titanic, she was a beautiful ocean liner. She is 570 feet long and has the capacity for 373 crew members and 1,542 passengers on 7 passenger decks. However, when she was built, she only carried standard wooden lifeboats. After the Titanic disaster in 1912, she was fitted with 16 steel lifeboats. However, she had a fatal flaw, which we'll be getting to later. Now, on May 28th, 1914, Empress of Ireland is beginning a new season of passenger service. She and her sister, Empress of Britain, are the fastest ships on the route. On this trip, Empress of Ireland had a small amount of survivors for first class, only having 87 passengers only booked for first class. However, there were many people aboard her, which were most famous. Lawrence Irving, son of Sir Henry Irving, is traveling along with his wife Mabel. They have been going on a tour throughout Europe, throughout North America, and are now traveling back home after a whole bunch of stage performances. They are by far the most famous passengers on the ship that night. There are 253 passengers in second class, a large number of whom are the Salvation Army and their families traveling home to Congress in London. Grace Hannigan and her family are among the many families traveling in the Salvation Army in second class. There are 717 third class passengers, the largest booking, nearly have booking all in third class of the Empress's capacity. This is mostly due to immigration, as people are traveling to and from Europe to get a better life in North America, most notably the United States. The Empress of Ireland is one of the finest ships in her time. Also on board Empress are 420 crew members, in command of Captain Henry George Kendall. He has been promoted after having found a criminal arrested on board another ship that he had commanded, the Monstrous. Today, this is his first trip under the command of the Empress of Ireland. This will also be his last. 4:30 p.m. Empress of Ireland departs Quebec City on her first trip of the season to Liverpool, England. 420 crew members and 1,057 passengers are aboard her. This is the last known photo of the Empress of Ireland. She is heading towards disaster. For now, it's a regular scheduled route to the St. Lawrence River under the command of a pilot. A pilot was used to guide the Empress to various spots where rocks were nearby. The passengers settle in for a safe routine across the North Atlantic. However, they do not know that a few hours later, most of the people on board this ship will be dead, along with the great ship herself. That night, dinner is served, and in the second class quarters, a passenger, part of the Salvation Army, writes a letter to his family. It is the last they'll ever hear of him. He goes to bed, not knowing he will die, along with many others on board the Empress that night. Also that night, Grace Hannigan is frightened of being next to a porthole in her cabin, and suggests that she sleeps away from the porthole. She is worried that water might spill into her cabin and drown her in case of a sinking. A few hours later, it would happen. In the early hours of May 29th, 1914, the Empress of Ireland's pilot disembarks on the tugboat Eureka. Not does the captain of the Eureka know he will meet the Empress yet again. The Empress continues north along the St. Lawrence River. Meanwhile, Storstad has just entered the St. Lawrence River, on the way to pick up the same pilot that just piloted the Empress of Ireland. Thomas Anderson has gone to bed. She is under the command of one of her leading officers. The crew aboard Storstad do not know that they are heading towards disaster, as well as the people on board the Empress. The Empress of Ireland continues at full speed. Then, a lookout spots the mast lights of a ship 6 miles away. This is later proven to be Storstad. From the Empress's point of view, the lights appear to be port, as the unknown ship at the time was attempting a port-to-port passing. Around the same time, the Storstad sees the lights of the Empress of Ireland. Then, a few minutes later, the green light comes on, as the Empress of Ireland is attempting a starboard passing of the Storstad. Then, the Empress seems to make a change in her course. The reason for this alter in her course was because Captain Kendall had wanted the Empress of Ireland to proceed up the river as usual. However, things would not go according to plan. From Storstad's point of view, the Empress of Ireland seems to sway to starboard. The Empress of Ireland and Storstad are 4.5 miles away from each other. Then the fog comes down. It has come to the final minutes before the disaster. Empress of Ireland, Captain Kendall on board the Empress orders Empress of Ireland's engines to be stopped, in danger of running into the unknown ship, which will be Storstad. The Empress acknowledges this to Storstad by giving her 2 blasts of her whistle. Storstad responds to Empress of Ireland by giving a long blow of her whistle. On board the Empress of Ireland, Captain Kendall waits. As the Empress of Ireland coasts to a stop, the Storstad keeps going. Captain Anderson is ordered up to the bridge. But when Captain Anderson arrives on the bridge of Storstad, he faces a horrifying sight. Captain Anderson sees the lights of the Empress of Ireland right in front of his own ship. He orders the Storstad's course to be altered, whereupon he orders full steam astern. Meanwhile, Captain Kendall sees the Storstad heading straight for his own ship. He orders the Empress of Ireland full steam ahead to get her engines up and running again, and orders the lifeboats to be prepared in case of an emergency. The two ships can do nothing. The two ships can do nothing but hope that their speed and course will avoid the collision. Captain Kendall hopes for the best. But in the case of the Storstad, they come closer and closer together. However, it is too late. At 0200 hours on May 29th, 1914, the Storstad slices into the side of the Empress of Ireland. Passengers are jolted awake by the force of the collision, as the Stockholm slices a hole in the side of the Empress of Ireland between her two funnels. She is severely damaged and is taking on water quickly. A major flaw was that, not in the Titanic's case, where her watertight doors could be closed by a switch on the bridge, the Empress's doors had to be closed manually. This was a huge flaw, as in the sinking, many firemen lost their lives trying to close these doors. Captain Kendall orders the lifeboats to be launched. However, it is easier said than done. As the ship rapidly leans to the starboard, many of the lifeboats are rendered unusable. However, some lifeboats are able to get away. Even some people on board the port side try to launch lifeboats. However, they sadly get smashed to pieces, dropping the occupants into the sea. At this point, the ship is already contacting Follow Point, and the radio operator says that help is a half an hour away. The government steamers Eureka and Lady Evelyn rush to the scene. Captain Anderson aboard the Storstad also announces his lifeboats to be launched in a rescue effort to save the passengers of the Empress of Ireland. The ship is listening very badly, and water pours into portholes, killing passengers in their sleep. Only 5 lifeboats were able to escape the Empress of Ireland during her sinking. Actually, only a few minutes after the collision, her lights went out, plunging the entire ship in the darkness. The radio operator also mentioned that even that he had to get more power, that he had to walk across the wall of the dining room to get to his power source, which was for the reason of the Empress's starboard list. William Clark was a stoker on board the Empress. He had also survived the Titanic disaster 2 years earlier. He said, "The Titanic sank with her head down, very slowly, like a baby goes to sleep. The Empress of Ireland sank like a hog once killed. She rolled onto her side." 10 or 11 minutes after the collision, the Empress of Ireland is lying on her side. Captain Henry Kendall is thrown from the bridge. The crew members aboard Storstad are horrified at what they see. The boilers explode, killing many people that are still inside the rapid sinking ship. The Empress of Ireland slowly begins to sink beneath the waves, with her stern rising in the air, steam bellowing out from her funnels. The radio operator is able to escape, as well as William Clark, who also survived the Titanic disaster. Gracie Hennigan was on the ship and was waken up by the commotion outside. Once her family got on deck, the Empress began to capsize. When the ship finally capsized, she and her family were thrown from the railing into the sea below. Gracie Hennigan never saw her parents again. She was able to get crammed into a lifeboat and survive the sinking. She was the last survivor of the Empress of Ireland before she died at the age of 88. 14 minutes after the collision, it is done. The Empress of Ireland sinks beneath the waves, carrying many people to their deaths. When Captain Kendall finally surfaces, the Empress is nowhere to be seen. Many people who had scrambled onto the side of the ship now find themselves in the sea. Captain Kendall was able to get on board a lifeboat and orders the rescue operation along with the 2 lifeboats from Storstad. However, the cries get less and less, and soon the sea is quiet, only filled with dead bodies and a crippled ship. Captain Kendall is forced to stop the rescue operation. Then Lady Evelyn and the Eureka arrive on the scene. As soon as Captain Kendall goes aboard Storstad, he is face to face with Captain Anderson of Storstad. "Are you the captain of the ship?" he says. "Yes, I am," says Anderson. "You have sunk my ship," Captain Kendall says. He remains for the rest of his life until he dies in 1965 that it was not his fault for the sinking of the Empress of Ireland. However, the fight was short-lived due to the skipper of the Eureka saying that a fight wouldn't solve anything. Now they had rescue operations to do. All survivors were initially taken aboard Storstad. Even some people had to go down to the boiler room for warmth. However, 20 of the survivors died in the freighter that sank their beautiful ocean liner. Of the 485 survivors taken aboard Storstad, 20 died, leaving 465 survivors. Only 4 of them were children. Grace Hennigan was among those 4 children that survived the sinking. The passengers were later taken aboard the Lady Evelyn. The Storstad was able to limp to Montreal under her own power, where she was immediately detained. An inquiry was sent into the investigation by Lord Mersey, who would also do the inquiries of the Titanic 2 years earlier, and the sinking of the Lusitania a year later. Several witnesses were called to the inquiry, as well as 28 survivors of the Empress of Ireland, including Captain Kendall and Captain Anderson, and 11 others from the Storstad. The final report would be controversial. In his final report, Lord Mersey declared that the Storstad was the cause of collision, and the Chief Officer Toughness was held to blame for neglecting and altering his course, leading to the fate of the Empress of Ireland. Captain Anderson called Lord Mersey a fool to say that he was the one who caused the sinking. In the Norwegian inquiry, the Norwegians blamed Captain Kendall for the disaster, as he was the one who was altering his course. As I said earlier, Storstad had observed Empress of Ireland moving to her starboard side. In the end, Storstad was to blame for the collision, and instead of getting a reward that the CPR couldn't pay, the CPR actually bought the Storstad herself. But for a few months, as the CPR sold her to a small Norwegian company classified by the one the Storstad was previously owned by. However, the Empress of Ireland's story is even more twisting. Empress of Ireland had her ship's captain, Emmy. Emmy had left the ship, but then was taken back onto the ship, but she left the ship again, and Empress of Ireland sailed without her. This was considered a bad omen, and the ship was bound to become a disaster. And on May 29th, 1914, in only 14 minutes, it did happen, and the Empress of Ireland now lies at the bottom of the St. Lawrence River. A few months later, a hole was blasted in it to retrieve gold and important papers that were still on the ship. Now, the wreck still lies at the bottom of the St. Lawrence River, a dazzling wreck for what was once a beautiful ocean liner. But I guess you're probably wondering, Michael, what happened to the Storstad? On the 8th of March, 1917, in World War I, the SS Storstad was torpedoed and sunk by the U-62 close to where Lusitania was sunk 2 years earlier. 3 crew members died on the Storstad. Though he still remained with the sea, Captain Henry George Kendall never became a captain of a ship again. He died in 1965, still saying it was not his fault for the collision and sinking of the Empress of Ireland. The sinking of a beautiful ocean liner, and most of the Salvation Army were nearly wiped out in the sinking, only having very few survivors. including Grace Hennigan. She was the only member of her family to survive the sinking. She died she died at the age of 87, a day before her 88th birthday. But she remained connected with the Empress of Ireland for the rest of her life. Thank you very much for watching this video about the Empress of Ireland and her sinking and what happened to the Storstad. Hopefully by watching this video, you'll remember the Empress of Ireland, and this is a tribute to my fourth favorite ocean liner, the RMS Empress of Ireland, the Canadian Titanic, the Queen of the St. Lawrence River, along with her sister, Empress of Britain. Thank you very much for enjoying this video. I am Mike Benitez, signing out on the story of the Canadian Titanic, and one of the most forgotten ship disasters, in which 1,112 people died. This was the story of the sinking of the RMS Empress of Ireland. Thank you for watching.